Welcome to Football Daily, and today we're bringing you 10 times transfers were hijacked by another club. 10. Gonzalo Higuain. How could we nearly start off this top 10 without one of Arsene Wenger's nearly signed players? Higuain was seemingly on the periphery of Madrid's side, never really nailing down a starting berth thanks to Benzema, and in 2013 he was seeking a move away from the Bernabeu. Gonzalo is in demand for some of Europe's top clubs, with Arsenal emerging as favourites to land the striker. A €35 million deal was agreed with Madrid, as well as Higuain's wages, but as soon as Arsenal learned of Luis Suarez's apparent release clause, the Higuain deal was put on the back burner. Whilst Arsenal messed around offering 40 million plus £1 for Suarez, Napoli swooped in for Higuain, quickly completing a €40 million transfer for the Argentine international to play in Naples the next season. Arsenal meanwhile had their Suarez bid rejected, despite it meeting the release clause and ending up having to play Giroud up front the next season. 9. Eusebio. Benfica's greatest ever player, Eusebio nearly joined the Lions as opposed to the Eagles. There's been plenty of myths on how Benfica acquired the youngster, even including allegations that they kidnapped and hid him away from their city rivals. The tale actually goes that Bella Gutmann stumbled upon Eusebio in the barbers and eventually offered his family more money than they'd ever seen, trumping Sporting's offer to just simply bring him to Europe without pay. The rest, as they say, is history. The Black Panther went on to score 473 times in 440 games for the Reds, winning the league on 11 occasions and even lifting the European Cup. 8. Roy Keane. It's hard to imagine Roy Keane not linking up with Fergie at United, but he was all set to join Kenny Dalglish's Blackburn until he went on to Old Trafford for a British transfer record fee. The end of Clough's reign was nothing short of a disaster. He'd taken Forest to the pinnacle of Europe, then to the brink of relegation, and his brightest prospect in Keane was set to leave to compound the misery. A £4 million fee was agreed with Blackburn, and contract terms were finalised, except there was a slight issue. All of the paperwork was yet to be completed, but Dalglish and the young midfielder verbally agreed that it'd all be signed, sealed and delivered on Monday. Ferguson caught hold of the move and swiftly rang up Keane to try and thrash out a deal on the weekend before Rovers had a chance. 7 league titles, 4 FA Cups and a Champions League later, we're sure that Keane was pretty happy with his final decision. 7. Patrick Vieira. One of the best midfielders in Premier League history, Vieira had it all. The physique, the aggressiveness, the footballing intelligence, and most of all, the ability. But in a different timeline, there was a chance that the Frenchman might have developed in the Eredivisie rather than at Arsenal. After failing to break into Milan's first team, Vieira sought opportunities elsewhere, and Ajax were the side with the heaviest interest. So much so that the Frenchman was in Amsterdam to sign a contract. Him and his agents received a phone call from a manager in Japan though, who begged him to stop and go to Arsenal. It was of course Arsene Wenger, who wasn't even announced as the next Gunners boss, yet was already heavily involved in transfer dealings before his arrival. He became a legend and won pretty much everything, and Wenger admitted that his history at the club could have changed if he hadn't convinced Vieira to join. 6. Henrik Mkhitaryan. Captain Armenia was hot property in his last season at Shakhtar. Mkhitaryan managed to score 25 goals in just 29 league games from centre midfield. Someone of his talent wasn't going to stay in Ukraine for long, and Liverpool were long-time admirers of the playmaker. A rumoured £22 million bid was lodged by Brendan Rodgers, who spoke to Mkhitaryan several times on the phone, trying to convince him to play with figures such as Gerrard and Luis Suarez. Mkhitaryan himself, however, had several doubts of his ability to thrive in the Premier League at just 24 years of age. Jurgen Klopp intervened whilst the Armenian was indecisive, and convinced Mkhitaryan to believe in Dortmund's project. He's probably regretting that now though, as he could desperately use a productive winger like him whilst Mane's injured at crunch time. 5. Obi Mikel. Everyone remembers Robinho's up where he said he was happy to join Chelsea in his Manchester City press conference. But how about actually being unveiled as a United player swiftly before joining Chelsea? Welcome to the world of Obi Mikel. The Nigerian's move to England was a chaotic mess. United persuaded the teenager to sign a deal without the supervision of his agents. However, Chelsea stated that they agreed a deal with Mikel and his agents. There was even a story where Carlos Queiroz accused Chelsea of trying to kidnap the midfielder. Mikel was found safely in a London hotel just 9 days later, going on to Sky Sports to express his desire to sign for Chelsea. What an absolute cluster. Any prospect of a transfer was delayed until the next summer window, where Chelsea, United and his original club Lille had all agreed a deal which worked for all parties. The Blues ended up paying Manchester United 12 mil and Lille 4 mil. It could all be argued that Mikel wasn't even worth it. 4. David De Gea. Not a conventional transfer hijacking, but a potential inside sabotage to prevent a deal. It was apparently only a fax machine that stopped David De Gea joining Real Madrid in 2015. It had been a frustrating couple of years for the Spaniard. Despite being named as United's Player of the Year for 2 consecutive seasons, his team's performances were lacklustre to say the least. They finished 7th in the 13-14 season thanks to David Moyes' managerial expertise, and finished 17 points adrift of Chelsea the following year. De Gea felt he deserved more, and with Madrid hovering around him in the summer, the stopper was angling for a move. In a power play, De Gea reportedly refused to play for United until they sanctioned a move to the Bernabeu, and it finally looked like it was materialising on deadline day, when a £29 million offer plus Keylor Navas was accepted by the Red Devils. The transfer suspiciously fell through as the paperwork wasn't submitted in time, and there's no real clarity on what happened, by the two clubs blaming each other. But we suspect that Ed Woodward was seen smirking as he unplugged the fax machine with just a couple of minutes left until the deadline. 3. Aaron Ramsey. It's humiliating enough having all the country's reliable sources telling you that a transfer is completed, which then doesn't go through. But imagine announcing an agreed fee on the club's website, only for him to go sign for a rival. Well, here's the case of Manchester United's Aaron Ramsey chase. 17 years old at the time, the Welshman was enjoying a breakout season for Cardiff, playing in the FA Cup final and making 21 first-team appearances that year. Standout performances led the midfielder to be looked at by United, Arsenal and Everton. The Red Devils were the first to agree a fee for the prospect, and were seemingly so confident they announced it on their official site. Embarrassingly, Ramsey ended up heading to North London, and that article on Ramsey's agreed fee is still on United's website to this day. 2. Willian. A hijacked transfer that got hijacked. Willian's transfer to Chelsea in 2013 was all over the place. Transfer listed by Anzi, along with everyone else in their squad, the chase for Willian was hotly contested with Liverpool, Spurs and the Blues all interested. Liverpool were the first with concrete interest in the Brazilian before Spurs gazumped their offer. It seemed an easy ride for the Lily Whites, had already signed Paulinho, Soldado, Eriksson and Capu, with Willian set to be the icing on top of the cake. Unfortunately for them, 4 out of the 5 players mentioned turned out to be absolute rubbish, and Chelsea somehow sneaked in to take Willian off their hands. Spurs had paid for Willian to fly over and take his medical, then apparently were duped into paying for a cab to Cobham, where the winger finalised his deal with the Blues. Willian can't have no regrets though, as he's on his way to a second Premier League title. 1. Alfredo Di Stefano. Cristiano might have taken over Di Stefano as Madrid's greatest ever player in recent years, but the Argentine was remarkably close to wearing the famous Blaugrana strip week in, week out. So much so, he even played in a couple of friendlies of Barca, and was pictured alongside the legendary Laszlo Kubala. A long and complicated saga. Barcelona initially failed to agree a deal with Millonarios, who could only move him onto a different club with River Plate's permission. Di Stefano even told Marca that he wanted to play for the Catalan side, but Madrid were also extremely interested, and it was up to FIFA to decide Di Stefano's future. The federation decided that the Argentine would be at Real Madrid for the first 2 seasons, then play for Barcelona in the next 2, hoping that the 2 clubs would come to an agreement during that period. The idea, unsurprisingly, didn't come to fruition. Instead, whilst Di Stefano was presented as a Madrid player, Barca's president stepped down on the same day. No one really knows the concrete facts of what happened thereafter, but Di Stefano remained a Madridista for 11 years, whilst Barca were left ruining of what could have been.
So we hope you enjoyed that, and if you want to check out more of our videos, then click here on screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe and get on our Snapchat and our Twitter.